Time now for the Sunday Talk. Tonight, the politics of commenting online. Once they were part of an internet dream of interactivity, turning the websites of elite media into public squares. But this week, a rude awakening. CBC News management made the decision to suspend comment sections on all stories about Indigenous people. Here's why.
You should go play in the park near us, where the Indians play and murder and beat people.
First Nations are not responsible enough to be given control of anything.
If you didn't drink, do drugs, prostitution, etc., you wouldn't get murdered.
Those are CBC reporters reading comments left below their stories online. Racist and ugly. And not just about Aboriginals. You see comments like that under all kinds of stories. Not exactly the dialogue people had hoped for when it all began.
For years, they've been saying these things would change the world, would mature from adding machines and typewriters to tools of the human spirit. Now, maybe it's coming true because of internet.
In the mid-90s, a new world opened up. Early adopters saw it as a tool for democracy, giving people a stronger voice, bringing people together. But as more and more people got online, that optimism soured.
It's brought all sorts of different factions together, from nationalists to supremacists.
The internet became a place for users to attack anonymously. Fast forward to 2015, and the vitriol has only worsened. And it's not just CBC. Just this year, Sun Media and the National Post have also put an end to anonymous commenting. But has something been lost? I'm joined now by our panelists. Jonathan Kay is editor-in-chief at Walrus Magazine. Tasha Carradine is a columnist with the National Post and iPolitics. And guest panelist tonight, Chelsea Vowell, is Métis, a writer and educator specializing in Indigenous issues. And she joins us from Montreal tonight. So, Chelsea, thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to start with you. What has been your experience? Have you seen some of those comments like we saw just a moment ago?
Oh, those are some tame comments, to be honest. Yeah, those are honestly some of the nicer ones I've seen. But some of the comments I've seen just make your stomach sink. You know, you go to read a story about something that you find interesting, and you say, don't read the comments, and then you do it because you can't help it. And it's just full of invective and stereotypes and just really, really awful stuff that's not really adding anything to any sort of dialogue.
Do you respond?
At the beginning, definitely. A couple of years ago, I was like, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to change their minds. I'm going to teach them. I'm going to give them facts, figures. I'm never going to make them just, take my word for it. And I was giving people sources. And then I would see no changes.
John, as an editor, as a writer, you've seen a lot of this. What's been your experience?
At first, I think maybe 15 years ago when this started, there was some value in it. People actually did exchange intelligent opinions and comment threads. And what I gradually saw was that more and more people started doing it, and a higher percentage of them became not just hateful, but simply dogmatic. In many cases, just complete non sequiturs. There were 2 or 3 issues they wanted to argue about, so they just throw in their arguments to threads. And gradually, I lost interest in reading comments on my own articles. So it used to be I'd be very excited if there were hundreds or thousands of comments under my articles. And the last few years, what I found is there might be 1,000 comments, and it might be the same 20 people getting into an argument with each other about something that has nothing to do with my article. So it's basically become kind of like a hookup forum for people who have nothing better to do.
What's your experience, Tasha, and what's your sense of who these people are?
Well, my experience, I agree with you. I stopped reading the comments. What I tend to look at is how many people comment, just to see if there's any as a volume of interest in a particular subject. But I don't read the individual ones because I agree. It's been a lot of that, of pet projects or pet peeves that people have. I think what it is, people who are looking for a forum, who don't have a legitimate forum, I use that word not to be condescending, but who don't have a published forum, for example, of their own, or don't have a blog, or want to just say things anonymously, looking for a platform. And they hijack that platform. They hijack the platform of another newspaper or a news outlet because they know people will look at it, and then they talk to each other. And they have these random conversations, and it adds very little value. John?
It's completely unrepresentative of mainstream opinion, because often what you find is people who agree with mainstream political views, they have no interest in commenting because they feel that their view is already represented. The people you see on comment threads often are people with fringe views who don't see their view represented in the mainstream media, And so they're the ones who disproportionately hijack these comment threads because they have something to say that they think no one else is saying, which often is incredibly racist or stupid or ignorant or conspiracy theories. And that's why I've stopped reading these things. I don't think they offer any value.
So, Chelsea, as someone sort of in the middle of all of this, I mean, do you get the sense that these people are at all representative? Like, does this say something about who Canadians are, or is it, as John and Tasha are saying, just people who are desperately trying to be heard when no one else is paying attention?
I think it's a little bit of that, needing a platform, but I would say depending on the topic, when it comes to Indigenous peoples, I don't think that these are the fringe. I think that the ones that you see that are the most awful are the fringe of the fringe, you know. There's a lot of ignorance about Indigenous issues, and there's a lot of racism, and that's Canada-wide. That's not just in the comment sections.
What are the topics that seem to provoke this kind of commentary, John?
There's about a half dozen that just predictably you know that you're going to get a lot of horrible, often profane and offensive comments. First Nations is one of them. Anything to do with Quebec that's published in English, often just a complete torrent of hate speech. Anything to do with bioethics, anything to do with gay rights issues, anything to do with abortion, certainly, anything to do with Muslims. Or sometimes Jews, but it's actually more Muslims these days. And the things that are said about Muslims, I mean, often it is flat out just hate speech. And those are the issues that predictably, and it doesn't matter what the tenor of the article is, it doesn't matter if it's an opinion article, news article, if any of those issues appear, you're just predictably going to get a lot of complete nonsense.
Go ahead, Tasha.
No, I was going to say, while I abhor the nonsense, the one thing that I will take Chelsea's point in the sense of how it might reflect mainstream opinion. There are some within the comments. It's not to say that all the comments or all the commentors are these people who just sit in their basement, the stereotype, and are doing this all day, and that's what they do and argue with each other. There are a lot of people who you feel like they're just shouting at their TV, basically, and will say these things. And it does, unfortunately, I won't say this is valuable of it, but it gives us a sense of how much we have to fight these issues of racism and sexism and homophobia and other things, because it is out there. The only small value I would say in seeing this is knowing that there is work to do, in the sense that people have these opinions and they feel comfortable expressing them online, mostly anonymously, but in some cases even with their own names attached.
So, Chelsea, you say you're not responding to these, you're not trying to win people over anymore. What is the solution? I mean, CBC is suspending it, trying to come up with some way of improving the situation. Should they be shut down, these comment sections?
The solution is like systemic education when it comes to First Nations issues and Indigenous issues in general. Obviously, CBC can't do that. So in terms of the comment sections, I think one, people need to stop being anonymous, and that's not going to stop. I mean, people go on Facebook under their own names and say even worse things, like actually literally call for people to kill, Indigenous people. So being not anonymous is not enough. I think it needs to be heavily moderated, and it has to become normal to just have a conversation with respect, and that's going to take a lot of oversight. Unfortunately, it's going to literally drive moderators to the brink to have to pay attention to, until that becomes a commenting culture.
Well, that's a lot of resources to put out. That's one of the issues for CBC is how many journalists do you not hire because you're hiring more moderators?
Then shut it down.
Shut it down. Do you think it should?
Yeah,
is it worth saving?
I agree with that. If there was a way to save it in a way that didn't require resources, that'd be great. But unfortunately, if you're going to make a decision, are we going to hire 3 new editors who are actually going to generate news, or are we going to hire 3 people who are going to sit there in a box, cubicle somewhere, going through these comments, which, by the way, no one's going to read anyway. Yeah. As I say, if you go through the comment thread, there's like the same 10 people going at each other.
It's an echo chamber.
Yeah, and how does this supply value to media consumers?
Well, the CBC online guy here argues that 80% of what we get is actually valuable. It's just that there are so many now, because we get a lot of comments, that it's overwhelming.
But sorry.
Isn't there something lost here among all those others?
You can get the same thing on Twitter, though. I mean, that's was one thing. Social media supplies the same thing.
Well, I was going to say this is the issue of platform, and people seem to think that, I don't think this is necessarily a free speech issue, because I think you don't have a right to be on someone else's platform. If you want to say these things, you can start a blog, you can pay for your own webpage, or you can go on Twitter or other places where you can say these things. But to say that everyone has a right to comment on an article at the end on another platform, I don't think so. I think we should return to the days of letters to the editor, where you had to say your name, your city, you had to out yourself, identify yourself before you said anything. The issue, though, is the volume, because I agree. The resource issue is huge when we are living in a society where you can send these letters to the editor so quickly and so voluminously, it's hard to keep track.
Do you see any value in trying to save this, Chelsea?
Honestly, no, not really. I mean, who would be benefiting from this? The people
Well, don't you want to
who-
broaden people's minds, right?
That's why I write. You know, that's actually literally why I started writing. Is I was in these comment sections trying to educate people and repeating myself and saying, you know what, forget it. I'm not going to waste my time there. I'm going to go write a comprehensive article with sources, and every time somebody brings that issue up, boom, I'm just going to send them to the link. Go read that.
So just go on Twitter then, John?
The great thing about Twitter is you can talk to 1 million people, you can talk to 1,000 people, and if you say things that are hateful, people can unsubscribe from you. They can simply, you know, if you're a hate monger, they don't have to be exposed to what you're saying. Whereas if you put a hateful opinion on the bottom of a CBC article, you're guaranteed a certain audience because CBC web surfers are going to see what you have to say, and they're cheating the system because they didn't earn that audience. You know, let it be subject to the democratic process of social media, where if you have something interesting to say, people subscribe. Otherwise, they'll shut you down.
Last point, Tata.
I'd say I'd like Twitter to be more civil too, because I think that, you know, it would be nice if people weren't just yelling whatever came into their head. But I think that, again, it goes to the only value I see is that we know these issues have to be worked on. But apart from that, I think that if we lost the comment sections tomorrow, it wouldn't be a huge loss.
The comment threads.
The comment threads, exactly. The comment, now the sections, you're right. The comments on the comment section, it wouldn't be a great loss.
Well, thank you so much. We obviously want all your comments on this, the nice ones, please. And thank you so much to you, Chelsea, in Montreal.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.